Hello, world. It's John Pinto, your roving realtor, bon vivant, and vlogger. And I am here with Ted Stephanos from HomeGuard Natural Hazard Disclosure. Say that 3 times easy. Hello, Ted.
Hi, how are you doing today?
And Rafael Betances with HomeGuard Incorporated Inspections. How are you today, Rafael?
Doing great, John. Doing great. Thank you again for having us.
Excellent. And today we are going to talk about landslide zones. Now, again, waxing poetic. Here we are in fire season. The fire maps have been extremely scary all over the Bay Area, especially in the North Bay. And inevitably, what follows wildfire season is rainy season. And then we always have conversations coming up about all the brush and shrubbery and trees have been wiped out by the wildfires. And you've got a variety of flooding risks, maybe landslide. So tell us a little bit about these landslide zones in the natural hazard disclosures. What should consumers and realtors be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple different sources that we're using for landslide disclosure. One of them, as part of the natural hazard disclosure statement, is the seismic hazard zones that cover liquefaction and landslide zones. And so that is based on what they consider a earthquake-induced landslide zone. So they look at the state, this is the California Geological Survey, they look at areas that have a historical occurrence for landslides, or areas that could be prone to landslides. So they're not really taking burn areas into account when they're creating these maps.
Makes sense.
I'm sorry?
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so what they're doing is they're looking at slope and they're looking at history. Now, in the NHD report, a lot of the good companies out there are going to do localized disclosure, meaning we're pulling maps from other sources like counties and cities that are adopted by reference as part of their general plans. And so that means that we are not just using information that's coming from the state, but also local sources, city and county. And those landslide maps can really differ on what they're showing. Some are showing debris flow hazard areas. So a debris flow would be exactly what we're talking about as far as where you have historical fire damage, like what we had in Santa Barbara a couple years ago. And just after those, I think it was, I forgot the name of that, the big fire, the massive fire that occurred in Ventura in Santa Barbara County a couple years ago. And you had just horrendous debris flows a couple months after that fire that came right down into the Santa Barbara area, caused tremendous amount of damage. And so the city of Santa Barbara has mapped out those debris flow areas. It might be the county or the city or. And so we would use those maps because they've been adopted by reference as part of their general plan. So like I said, it really depends on where the county is and what the hazards are in relation to that county. But there's, like I said, a lot of different sources that we're using for this information. And sometimes they're like Napa County, for example, where you're located. We are using maps that are adopted by Napa County that do show mapped landslides and soil creep areas and things like that. But it's pretty complicated. Some of those maps are kind of hard to read too. And so it kind of takes a trained eye to interpret what you're looking at as well. You're looking at scarps, creep areas, debris flows in some cases, and then even questionable landslides or probable landslides or definite landslides.
So let's have your knowledge intersect with my experience in this area. And that would be when I'm driving north on 680 up towards the East Bay, and I look up on the East Foothills, whether it's Alum Rock or Mission San Jose, and I see a lot of wrinkled hillside that's just kind of collapsing on itself for no particular reason. And I do remember a couple of situations where in the East Highlands, you actually had some roads in a few subdivisions up there actually collapse under their own weight and the weight of collapsing dirt above them. Would that be what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's probably the Penitentiary Creek landslide you're referring to.
It's same area, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so that entire area is mapped by every sources that we have, like the state, county, and city all have that area mapped as a massive landslide. It actually is a physically moving landslide. So
Now that you mention it, I do remember some real estate folklore that hillside actually moves a couple of inches a year.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, you
that's
just ride
daunting. What's that?
it. You just ride it down the hill.
That is quite daunting. So as a
Yeah,
consumer, how do you protect yourself in terms of, is that just a detail, an interesting detail, or is it something that would give you pause as to whether or not you were going to buy up there and what you would do to mitigate your risks?
Well, you mean from a seller standpoint or for a realtor standpoint?
If you're an owner, you got to be thinking about this. If you're a buyer, you got to be thinking about this. And if you're a realtor, you're the ones with the deep pockets and the errors and omissions insurance that's going to be the
Well,
recipient of the lawsuit when something happens.
well, yeah, but that being said, if you have knowledge, that needs to be disclosed. So, E&O insurance isn't going to cover something that you purposely didn't say to
Right. What I'm referring to, Ted, is most realtors are not geologic experts.
Yeah.
And they will innocently take a listing. They'll do their diligent visual inspection. They may see some telltale cracks in the door jambs and the window jambs, and maybe some horizontal cracking on the uphill portion of the house where it's showing some movement. They'll make their notations. Especially if they don't have a lot of experience, they don't know what the implications of that are. They'll complete their disclosure link with the NHD, and that's the end of it. And then, let's say a few months later, or a few years later, a decade later, you have a heavy rain event or what have you. It causes that landslide area to give way, and now you've got a situation. We have 200,000 litigating attorneys in the state of California. It doesn't really matter if you're at fault or not. You just have the insurance.
Right. Well, it's a very open-ended question there, because every situation is unique, of course, but this is driving home the importance of purchasing or making sure you're getting an NHD report and is prepared by a qualified expert in the field. Because like I said, there are some of those areas that are mapped by cities and counties that might not be mapped by the state. And this is especially true with fault zones, where you have secondary faults that might not be mapped by the state. And that's true for landslide zones as well. And so you got to make sure that you're using a company that's providing that full disclosure, because as a real estate agent, if you're not 100% sure what's going on there and you don't have actual knowledge of even the Penitentiary Creek landslide, so maybe it's a real estate agent from Sacramento who's listing a property there who isn't familiar with that, you're still protected by the NHD report, because the buyer's getting that report, they're reading it, interpreting it, signing it. Means that now, if they're going through the whole transaction and don't have any questions about this landslide or active landslide, and escrow closes, then the real estate agent is in good hands there, because they're providing an NHD report. They may not have the actual knowledge of what's going on there. There's a gray area, though. Should they have that knowledge or shouldn't they have that knowledge? So,
right. And I think the nature of my question is, less on the liability side and more on the, and kind of begs the importance of quote unquote buyer brokerage, where you have to be secure in your relationship with your agent, and your agent has to be knowledgeable on implications that your decisions might have, consequences that your decisions may have that they don't have. So, in other words, okay, this is what the disclosures are on landslides or earthquakes or what have you. These are the implications. These are the possible consequences. These are the possible mitigations, and these are your possible other options. That's what I'm talking about, because NHD is kind of after the fact, almost. I mean, in an ideal world, the listing agent is populating the NHD to the disclosure link, and the buyer is looking at the NHD along with 200 pages of other disclosures.
Right.
Okay. So in a perfect world, the buyer who in 2020 can be somewhat elusive. Everything is on the internet. There's no time to have meetings and discussions. But I think the best standard of practice that buyers and agents could hope for is where an NHD discussion needs to take place before they even start looking at homes. Does that make any sense to you, Ted?
Yeah, we do get that question from customers as well. Before they want to know, what are the safest places to be buying and things.
Exactly.
So we get that question a lot of times. Sometimes it's difficult to answer because you don't know them. They may want something that has a beautiful, scenic
view
area, a view, but that means that they're up in the hills. So that means that you're always going to be prone to some degree of slope stability hazards. That's just common sense, right? So, and fires for that matter. So, it's difficult to answer those questions, but we'll do our best to answer any questions that buyers have on that.
Now, who would have thunk that we could have such an animated conversation on landslide disclosure? Rafael brought it up. He goes, I think we should go down that rabbit hole. I think we need an extra video on landslides, and I would agree with him. So, Ted, this again begs the question of consumers and realtors being proactive. So if they were going to be directed anywhere to find out in advance about landslide areas, earthquake zones, where would you direct them on your website, and what tab would they be looking for?
Yeah, they can go to HomeGuard.com and click the NHD report tab. And, we have information about what's in the NHD report. They can always call me as well at 408-690-2149, and I can help direct them. Everything that we provide in the NHD report, and this is true for any NHD companies, we're all using public information. So if you know where to go to find the information, cities and counties, state, federal, I can help direct them in that area too, because these days with the internet, there's a lot of really good stuff. ABAG is a great source, Association of Bay Area Governments. If you're looking in the Bay Area, the ABAG website has a lot of good information for buyers to peruse through on natural hazards.
Well stated. Good advice from Ted Stephanos from HomeGuard Natural Hazard Disclosures. And Rafael, if they're too lazy to go look at the website and they just want to use their concierge service, aka Rafael Betances, and call him or email him for anything and everything that they need, how do they contact you?
Absolutely. If you just want to go ahead and order, or you just trust our amazing NHD department so much after watching this video, you can literally just text me or call me at 707-616-8762.
Excellent. Well, that was highly enlightening. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and we will see you on the next video.